Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like we've got the Ohio governor is planning on coming out to Idaho this morning about noon. EW 42 East Wing at the state capitol, 700 West Jefferson. There's a lot of hoopla about the Convention of the States, the Balanced Budget Amendment, the state's call for a constitutional convention, and I have a few comments that I wanted to make on that a few people aren't even bothering to listen to, or at least out of emotion have completely abandoned any foundational principles on which they're laid. And I don't mean this out of disrespect to anyone, because we all really desire the same end, to be able to rein in the federal government. I think that anybody that opposes the Article 5 convention isn't because we oppose Article 5 because our founders put it in there and we're against the Constitution. That's not it at all. It's very dangerous in this political climate when you try to apply something, especially a constitutional provision like this one, that wasn't even meant for what we're doing. And in this particular video, I wanted to cover some of the things that you're not going to hear. This is about the Founding Fathers' words on the Article 5 section of the Constitution, just so that you can understand where they're coming from. The Article 5 is being used by everyone, the left and the right, to be able to achieve a certain end. For example, Hawaii, and I think it's HJR 101, wants to be able to completely abolish. He wants to abolish the Second Amendment and add the entire 906-page Obamacare bill to the Constitution, making the Constitution almost unreadable anymore. There are, you've got people like Levin and all of the political conservative talking heads that support this thing, and I have not even heard one reference to the Constitution, the founders' understanding and application of this thing. Again, we do agree on reining in the federal government. The question is how to do that. They think that somehow magically we're going to go ahead and put some words that are going to be this wow factor, this chain, and these words are going to have these magical chain and shackle powers to be able to force the government to rein in itself, when in reality, if we look at the fundamental concepts of law, we'll understand that, laws are words on paper, on a particular text. The size of the text doesn't matter. It doesn't add to the enforcement of the particular law, which is why we have law enforcement. We've got sheriffs and we have cops that's job is defined as law enforcement. And the idea behind that is that the fact that the words of these particular laws cannot enforce themselves. The question then becomes, if we go ahead and we open up this Constitution and completely and possibly destroy it, who was the enforcement mechanism for the Constitution? Well, it wasn't the words on paper. It wasn't the expansion of the Constitution. It wasn't to be able to enumerate our rights in doing so. It was the knowledge of the people to hold government accountable, and it was the knowledge of the people to elect worthy candidates to be able to understand their oath of office and to point out any usurpation in the Constitution when the government tends to expand its powers unlawfully. So the question then becomes, are we acting in emotion where we're just, the Convention of the States group will say, oh, well, we can't just do nothing, and then they're blaming people like the John Birch Society or Eagle Forum for, well, they just don't understand. They don't believe in the Constitution and they're acting on emotion. Well, I would suggest that the other side is as well, and I want to be very careful, because a lot of my friends, most of them actually, are in support of the Convention of the States, and I want to make sure that I understand that I love them, or they understand I love them, and I'm not willing to debate this and get all like that on it. So this video is going to be talking a little bit specifically about the Constitution, and I'm going to use some source documentation here. This actually is found under the Motive Amendment, GPO Conan. This is a document from Congress.gov through the Congressional Research. It says, calling for a convention was to fix errors, not to adopt additional supplementary provisions. Ordinary legislation cannot be embedded in a Con amendment that relinquished the sovereign power of the state. The Vermont Constitution 1786 Part 2 Section 40, they shall not be out of the council of the General Assembly to be called council of censors, whose duty shall be to inquire whether the Constitution has been preserved inviolate in every part. What that basically means is that these people shall be chosen for this council, or to determine, before we actually opened up Article 5, to be able to see if every provision of the Constitution had been adhered to. Again, it was to be determined whether the Constitution was adhered to. It wasn't that Article 5 was going to be that enforcement mechanism. The Council of Censors, not the General Assembly, shall have the power to call a convention, and it appears to them absolute necessity of amending any article in this Constitution which may be defective. So again, they're talking about the errors. This is the Vermont Constitution 1786, Chapter 2, Article 40. They're talking about fixing errors in the Constitution, not enforcing them to obey their limitations. Colonel Mason had a quote, thought that the plan of amending the Constitution exceptionable and dangerous, as the proposing of amendments is in both the modes to depend in first immediately and on the second ultimately on Congress. No amendments of the proper kind would ever be obtained by the people. If government should become oppressive, and as he verily believed would be the case. This is the records of the Federal Convention. So I can go on. I can completely bore you about this. Basically, here's another quote from the Federal Farmer number 4. It says, "But when the power is once transferred from the many to the few, all changes become extremely difficult, especially beneficial to the people. Every man of reflection must see that the change in the now proposed is a transfer of power from the many to the few. However, if our countrymen are so soon changed, and the language of 1774 has become so odious to them, it will be in vain to use the language of freedom." Now, again, this is Federal Farmer, October 12, 1787. Again, James Madison, Federalist 49, 338 to 43. He says that it's for correcting the breaches of the Constitution. Again, in, what is this one? James Madison, Federalist 49. To repair some defect in our present form of government. And finally, but the reason of the public alone that ought to control and regulate the government. The passions ought to be controlled and regulated by the government. We found in the last paper that mere declarations in a written constitution are not sufficient to restrain the several departments within their legal limits. Again, that was James Madison, Federalist 49. So we better be very, very careful when we apply this article, open up this Article 5 Pandora's box, because we never know what's going to jump out. So a few words today. I'll go ahead and add some of the pros and cons here in my next video. Thanks, guys. Love you. Bye.